If you haven't heard by now, there's been a pretty intense journalism war going around that's got everyone confused when it comes to taking sides. It all started with the idea that Meta granted a politician the right to willingly remove Instagram posts, which seemed to be backed up by some inconsistent pieces of evidence. In this video, we're going to take you inside the messy fight between Meta and The Wire, so keep watching. First off, here's how the journalism war started in the first place. Let's rewind a couple of months ago. A new anonymous source reached out to a bunch of journalists at the nonprofit Indian news site The Wire, and they had quite the offer for them. It turns out the original source was actually an employee at Meta and wanted to share some secret information about the company's internal meetings with the reporters. Now, obviously, The Wire went ahead and met up with the source, who even verified their identity with a bunch of legal documents, work badges, pay slips, just whatever they needed. And after many conversations, they ended up trusting the source enough to turn to them while investigating a potential story. And what was it, you may ask? Well, it covers everything about how 7 Instagram posts were suspiciously removed that mocked an official in India's right-wing government. Yeep, some creepy stuff going on around here. Next thing we know, a story came out claiming that the company had given a high-ranking official in the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party the ability to go ahead and remove the posts willingly. As for Meta, they issued a strong denial of the story as soon as they could. But what happened right after that has to be one of the strangest tech journalism stories we can remember. The Wire started to slowly release a lot more information about its sources and how it created the story in the first place. On the other hand, Meta was pushing for evidence to battle their accusations, saying the publication's stories were fabricated. Following up, it was a credibility war between the two, and from there, the very same publication doubled down on its reporting with a statement, the impossibility of this being a hoax. In response, the company issued a pretty long rebuttal. Honestly, there was a lot of stuff going on back and forth. On one level, this is a story about whether the social media platform granted extraordinary secret powers to a pretty high-profile government official, and then came along with a whole forensic investigation to see whether all the evidence supporting the claim was even credible or not. On the other hand, it's also about how credibility is won and lost in a low-trust environment, and when you're not sure what the truth is, until one of the two parties trunks out to be a conspirator, who do you believe? Again, this is also about India and the very same authoritarian government that's tried to reduce press freedoms. In fact, even right now, it's working on creating a government panel that would review and overturn all of the social media platforms' content moderation decisions. Clearly, they've got a motive in this so-called conspiracy, so that's probably what makes this even more confusing. Adding to that, The Wire confirmed that they were also targeted last year by the NSO group's Pegasus software, which seemed like it was in the hands of the Indian government to keep a close eye on its journalists. And yet another story followed up when a journalist who worked on Meta had his accounts hacked. Not to mention, we can't trust the publication either. Yep, we've got our doubts about them too. Think about it. There are a bunch of inconsistencies here, along with the fact that they just relied on a fabricated email from Meta spokesman Andy Stone. And let's not forget the phony workplace and the original report about using XCheck, which is basically a software where you can't take down posts from high-profile users. But let's dive into the deets now. On October 10th, the publication published a story saying that Amit Malviya, who's, by the way, the head of the BJP's IT department, had special privileges all along, and all of this was under Meta's super suspicious XCheck program. So it implies that he could have easily gotten the post removed, violating none of Meta's rules if he wanted to. In fact, the report was taken in as evidence accusing Malviya of using his XCheck privileges. And if true, the report granted a lot more power to high-profile users than we actually thought. But as expected, Meta denied the report completely. In fact, Stone said, the evidence the entire story was based on seemed to be fabricated. Next day, new story. The Wire came up with a second story. They said that an internal email was leaked, which seemed to be from Stone, in which he seemed super confused about how the Instagram report on Malviya was leaked. What's more, the email didn't sound like the real Stone at all. Alright, so plot twist. It turns out that this email was fake too. In fact, Meta jumped in to say that the supposed email from which it was sent wasn't even his actual email address, and the recipient's email isn't the one they use either. Now, to catch you up, Meta is switching employees from @fb.com to @meta.com for their emails. Also seems like the perfect time, right? Anyway, since this was becoming bigger than we expected it to, a few tech reporters decided to jump in as well and say that they'd received emails from Stone's fb.com email. And this was as recent as August 31st. But here's the more important bit. The email they're talking about didn't even sound close to the actual Stone. Right after questioning the nature of the XCheck program, and then checking out the seemingly fabricated reports and email addresses, on October 15th, the publication issued a new response. It turns out they used DKIM to verify his original email and the sender as well. In fact, to back it up, they even embedded a detailed step-by-step video about how it verified the email. Now, there are a lot of technical details we could jump in, but let's keep this video going. Despite the attempt to set the story straight, The Wire's explanation brought in a bunch of new inconsistencies to the narrative, with 2021 timestamps in the original emails to 2022 timestamps and updated screenshots. There was a lot of ambiguity here. Coming up, Meta says their brand name is dragged into this intentionally. Now, as former Meta Chief Security Officer Alex Stamos and a bunch of other technical experts have pointed out, the DKIM verification doesn't prove anything. In fact, he said it would be trivial to fake the verification by DKIM Verify, as all you need is a script in your path that prints signature OK. And of course, the most important bit, Meta said that the video showing a source log into Instagram's internal software was, in fact, proof that they created it on October 13th using a free trial of its software. And this was 3 days after the publication's first article came out. So that simply proves that this Meta Workplace account was created externally, and they're dragging the company's name intentionally to defame it. It all started with the publication's certainty that Meta was lying about everything, but at this point, there's so much effort gone into this to believe they just orchestrated this series of events. And let's not forget the fact that they're telling us two entirely different sources are responsible for the leaked documents in their reports. Even though this is pointing toward it being a hoax, it's definitely one of the most elaborate ones we've come across. At the same time, the journalists won't budge, and they still stand by their reporting. And even if it was a hoax, who would have been responsible? Publications clearly been super critical of the BJP, and we all know that journalists have been a target of the surveillance attacks. It's only fair to assume there's a connection. Finally, the Wire reporters already got their story straight, at least for themselves. They simply denied any connection that we talked about for two simple reasons. First of all, the payslips and badges they got from one of their sources, paired up with the DKIM verifications, convinced them that they were dealing with a real Meta employee here. Next, even if the BJP wanted to target the publication, why in the world would they ever waste it on a story about posts from an Instagram account that hardly had 700 followers? It doesn't make a lot of sense. As of now, they're going to talk to a few outside experts to verify the documents and work on building their trust with readers. They're keeping everything transparent as they try to independently verify Stone's email. But either way, we don't think they'll be sending in any more disclosures our way now. On the other hand, the idea that Meta granted a politician the right to willingly remove Instagram posts is a pretty wild claim to say the least. And instead of coming up with concrete evidence, all the publication has managed to do so far is mostly undermine confidence in its original report. That's a wrap for this video. What's your take on Meta and The Wire's messy fight? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.